Hi everyone, this is Sam with Wine News in 5. Before I get to global news, a reminder that in honor of the 25th anniversary of JancesRobinson.com, we are currently offering 25% off annual and gift memberships. So if you need a gift suggestion or if you've been debating becoming a member, now is the time to do so. In terms of global news, today I'll discuss floods in Friuli, the sale of Ste Michelle Wine Estates, the recognition of Burgundian geographical indications in China, another duty hike in the UK, a new vineyard for LVMH, as well as strikes within the company, fraud in Vinho Verde, and an update on Barossa growers' fight against a luxury development on protected land. First up, floods in Friuli. On November 17th, torrential rainfall in Friuli Venezia Giulia triggered flooding and mudslides. The Torre River overflowed its banks, 2 people died, more than 300 were evacuated, and many historic buildings were destroyed. Millions of dollars of damage have been done to winery production facilities, vineyards, and cellars. The Borgo del Tiglio winery was hit by a mudslide, destroying a cellar containing more than 10,000 bottles, burying the cellar containing their 2025 vintage, and damaging the historic Ronco della Chiesa vineyard. Venica e Venica, Valentino Butusi, Martissima, and Casa Ritz all suffered damage. The Collio Consortium has set up a donation account to support the affected winemakers. The Butusi winery has launched a campaign to sell their mud-covered bottles to assist with repair costs. I've linked to both the Collio Consortium's donation account and the Butusi winery's sale on our site. Next, the sale of Ste Michelle Wine Estates. On December 4th, Washington's Wyckoff family, one of the largest grape growers in Washington state and owners of the Coventry Vale Winery, purchased Ste Michelle Wine Estates, Washington's largest wine producer, from the private equity company Sycamore Partners. The sale includes all Ste Michelle's Washington brands, including big hitters Chateau Ste Michelle, Columbia Crest, 14 Hands, Spring Valley, and North Star, as well as Washington production facilities, vineyards, and inventory. Ste Michelle's Oregon brands were not part of the deal. The terms of the deal remain undisclosed. This is the first time since 1973 that Washington's largest producer is both locally and family owned. On to the recognition of Burgundian geographical indications in China. On December 5th, China's National Intellectual Property Administration approved protection for 70 geographical indications, GIs, in Burgundy. The EU and China established a GI mutual recognition agreement in 2020. Since then, EU GI products falling under the agreement enjoy the same level of intellectual property protection as Chinese products. 80 out of Burgundy's 84 AOCs have now been added to that agreement. This will reduce the risk of counterfeit wines as well as reducing market entry costs for Burgundian wines. Next, another duty hike in the UK. On November 26th, the UK Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves, announced an excise tax hike effective February 1st, 2026 of 3.66% in line with inflation. Needless to say, the UK wine trade, which is already hurting from the previous tax hike in February this year, as well as the introduction of the extended producer responsibility levy on packaging, is not best pleased. A new graphic from Bibendum Wine, a UK-based merchant, shows that on a bottle of wine with 12.5% alcohol costing £7.07, the excise duty and VAT will make up 57% of the wine's cost. Jamie Avnell, group buying director for Bibendum, was quoted in a press release saying, "Whilst not unexpected, at a time when consumers are already under pressure in their spending, this increase adds further strain on everyone in the supply chain, all the way through to producers, many of whom have nothing left to squeeze. It risks reducing consumer choice and diminishing the experience of the wine category as more wines are pushed out of affordability." Next, the purchase of a new vineyard for LVMH, as well as strikes in the company's ranks. Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy has had a lot going on in the last week. On November 28th, they announced via press release that their brand French Bloom had acquired 25 hectares, 62 acres of vineyard in Limoux, France, making it the only exclusively non-alcoholic wine brand in the world with its own vineyard. On December 8th, Vitisphere reported that 85 to 90% of Moet Hennessy's staff went on strike on December 5th. The reason for the strike, according to a CGT Champagne Union leaflet, was that for the first time since its creation in 1967, no Moet Hennessy house, this includes Moet and Chandon, Merci, Veuve Clicquot, Ruinart, Krug, and Dom Perignon, will distribute a profit-sharing bonus. The same will be true for the next 3 years. As far as the wine industry goes, Moët Hennessy isn't doing terribly. They showed 58.1 billion euros in revenue during the first 3 quarters of 2025, with wine and champagne up 3%. In October, when third quarter results were announced, share prices surged 12%, increasing the wealth of LVMH owner Bernard Arnault by 16.3 billion euros in a single day. It stands to reason that disgruntled employees who, based on 58 years of profit sharing, had expected a bonus, decided to strike. Further strikes were planned for yesterday, December 11th. Next, fraud in Vinho Verde. On December 4th, Vinter, a Spain-based publication, published the news of the arrest of 8 suspects, including 4 employees of the Comissão de Viticultura da Região dos Vinhos Verdes, CVRVV, in conjunction with a large-scale investigation into the corruption of the certification process for Vinhos Verdes wines. Investigations began in August into a scheme involving collusion between CVRVV staff and certain winery owners. Allegedly, the CVRVV deliberately failed to monitor the origin and movement of grapes during the 2025 harvest and potentially compromised the integrity of wines labeled with the Vinhos Verdes DO. Reading between the lines, my guess is that the concern is most likely that cheaper wine was being trucked in from an area outside the DO. Finally, Barossa growers fight against a luxury development on protected land. Back in July, I reported on plans to build a 150-room IHG luxury hotel on protected land in Barossa. IHG has skirted the Barossa Council, who are in charge of preservation measures, and gone directly to South Australia's Minister of Planning, Nick Champion. Well, this development is still in the pipeline. Matthew McCulloch, news listener and managing director of Langmeal Winery, emailed me on November 30th to say that IHG had submitted its 1,767-page environmental impact statement on November 17th. The public has only been given until next Thursday, December 17th, to respond. Members of Preserve and Protect Barossa have submitted a 51-page response. I'll link to the whole thing in the transcript of this newscast, but I'm going to read you the last paragraph of the executive summary. In short, Barossans are not saying no to growth. They are saying yes in the right place. The CPA, CPD, SLP overlay, and relevant code provisions are seen locally as positive community-backed tools that maintain the balance between tourism, farming, and landscape. The SBWTAP proposal reads those same tools as obstacles, asks the Minister for Planning to set them aside for one resort on one rural hillside, and in doing so risks the very character, safety, and long-term opportunities that make the Barossa special, while setting a precedent that could weaken planning safeguards across South Australia. The group is very much hoping you'll send a formal submission endorsing this document. I know I will be. That's all for this episode of The Wine News. If you enjoy this newscast and you'd like to see it continue, please become a member of jancisrobinson.com. And if you have breaking news in your area, please email me news@jansisrobinson.com. Thanks.